So if for any reason you have any problems with Zoom, you can all go to YouTube. You just go to our homepage and it should be playing out there. So if for any reason you have any problems with Zoom, you can all go to YouTube. You just go to our homepage and it should be. And as you can tell, there is a bit of a lag with YouTube. Stop my video just for a sec. I am just going to mute myself very quickly. So in the absence of Vanessa, I'm going to do the next best thing, which is to show you a picture of Vanessa and with a lovely loaf of bread. So while we're waiting for Vanessa, there you go. You get a nice big sort of picture of Vanessa. And let me just tell you, a little bit about what we're going to be doing today, and then I'll switch back to that. So hopefully in a minute, Vanessa will be here. I'm just keeping an eye out for her. And the aim is then for you to basically hear from Vanessa about her extraordinary and amazing life as a baker, food journalist, gut microbiome genius, and just all around wonderful person. She has a hugely long and very, very sort of rich history in craft chocolate, which we're going to do. And what we've done is, anybody who's been to any of these sort of craft chocolate conversations before, is we're basically going to get Vanessa to tell you through a little bit about her life and her studies and everything else that she's been doing. But one of the sort of key aspects to it is that we pick different chocolates which basically represent different stages of her life, either geographically or thematically, and in some cases actually people who she's directly met, like towards the end with Grenada Chocolate Company. And we will basically invite you to taste those bars as she explains a little bit about what she's, you know, why she's picked those, and a little bit about her history. And I will try and ask her some moderately difficult questions. You don't really need to with Vanessa because she's just such a brilliant enthusiast about all great things. So it will be fascinating. The difficulty, I think, will be trying to sort of keep it to the hour that we've given ourselves to this. Maybe we'll go a little bit over. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you cook with craft chocolate. And I am now promoting the wonderful Vanessa to being a co-panelist, who I hope is here. Now, Vanessa, I need you to unmute yourself, and I need to see you. Right, we've got you. You're there. But just to see that we really do have the right person. This is Vanessa doing her amazing cooking. And I didn't just pick the color black because she's there. So Vanessa, I've just been telling everybody what we're going to be doing today. We're actually 2 minutes early, so you are super prompt. But I'm impressed to say that you've got like dozens of fans who are queuing up to see you and to join. So we've got lots and lots and lots of people here.
Well,
I was just sort of explaining what we were going to be doing, but yes.
I'm pottering around. I'm going to go get a glass of water. I'm very glad to say that I don't need polenta porridge today, which I don't know if you remember the World Chocolate Tasting Awards, but you're required to take a large mouthful of polenta porridge between each bite of chocolate.
Yes, it's an interesting way of cleansing your palate. I always think a glass of red wine does a bit better.
You know, I was going to say I'm going to get some water, but I'm very grateful for not having to eat loads of polenta porridge as well, which it does when you're doing the World Chocolate Award tasting and you're doing these kind of rounds of tasting. You end up, you know, having almost sort of double the amount of polenta that you do chocolate. But anyway, right, I'm just going to get a glass of water.
Right. So brilliant. Do use the chat, everybody. The other thing I would say very quickly is that we will be using something called menti.com, and I will be sharing. Actually, I could cheat and just share with you the number now very quickly. 82 47 48 9. Right, I will remember that. That's the number we're going to need, because we love it for people to be interactive. So even though we can't see you, we hope to be able to see your replies. So that's a bit of a cheat. So if you go to, I'm just going to put this in the chat. What we need you to do is please go to menti.com with a phone and enter 82 47 48 9. But as I was sort of saying, so the aim of this is I'm going to try and get Vanessa to open up, which is not that difficult because she's just so effusive and enthusiastic, but ask her lots of great questions about what she's been doing, how she's been doing. And then invite you, while we're doing the different talks through the different stages, to actually try the different chocolate bars and see you know, what sensations you get with them and how you get them. Now, the one thing that we do need to advise you is that a couple of the chocolates contain gluten and milk. So the milk chocolate we will tell you about a little bit later. It's this one. It's the Menacau milk. I can't remember if you got the big bar or the small bar. I think you probably all got the big bar, actually. And then the Pump Street, which is the first one, the first small bar that we've got, the taster bar, that also is a sourdough bread, which is, of course, apposite for Vanessa. And so that one, if you are gluten sensitive, we would advise you to substitute something else.
Right.
Right. So how
I
are
actually
you?
cannot see myself, so I'm assuming you can see me.
We can definitely see you. You look very well. We can see your kitchen and everything, and it all looks absolutely brilliant. So yeah, right. So on the grounds that we've got lots of material to cover from, and we've now got quite a few people here, I think we could almost sort of kick off. So the way we kick these off is we do want to explain a little bit about the art of eating chocolate in the right way. And we also, most importantly, want you to be getting into the habit of using menti.com. So what we'd love you to do is to go to your phones, as we sort of said, and just basically type in 82 menti.com. And it is all anonymous, I have to sort of say. So we don't know who's putting in what. But it's always sort of quite fun to sort of get the answers as we go through it. And it's very, very interesting to be able to sort of see what people say about the chocolates, which we're going to be trying too. So this is good. So this is good. So we've got a bunch of chocolate fans in the audience, which is to be expected. Which is really to be expected. And I'm always impressed by whenever we get what it says they don't really eat chocolate, but they're still going to come to a chocolate tasting, which is always sort of quite encouraging because it sort of suggests that, you know, that we've got a chance of converting them, which I think we would be able to do today. So that is good. Good. All right. Now we're going to ask you another question, which is more to do with sort of, you know, your baking and your cooking skills, which is, when did you most recently bake or cook with chocolate? Now, this one I think would be a bit unfair to be saying today. I think what we're basically going to really try and hit is basically, you know, whether or not you hit over the weekend or the last week, last month. This is very impressive to have this number of people. Just to put it in context, we did a couple of surveys actually with Google on this, and we discovered that it's about 20% of the UK cook with chocolate at least once a quarter. So you guys are outstanding. You are far, far, far better than that, which is really, really, really pretty good. Right. Okay. Now you've. I mean, this is good. We've got at least most of you using Menti, which is going to be great when we go forward. Right. Now, for those of you who've got a glass of wine, you all know what you're doing. For those of you who don't have a glass of wine, I still think you probably know how to, sort of enjoy wine or beer or whatever it is. Now, chocolate also has a slightly sort of important way of trying to do things. So we've given you a taster bar just to get you into the habit of tasting craft chocolate, because we think this is very important. So you have in front of you a small pink bar, I hope, of Pump Street chocolate, which has got a little bit of sourdough in it. I've got the big pack here, but I'm going to use that. And I'd like you to do something a little bit strange. And Vanessa is going to be this is the only time in the evening when I'm going to ask Vanessa to be my sort of assistant in basically doing something a bit strangely. So what I want Vanessa to do is I want you to grab your nose, take a small bit of the chocolate. This I would love, we can't see everybody doing this, but basically grab a small bit of the chocolate and then just basically put it on your tongue and suck it. But you've got to be holding your nose. The holding your nose bit is the really, really important part here. And the aim of it is within the next 10 or 20 seconds is not to get you all asphyxiated, but it's basically to get you so that the chocolate starts to melt. If you need to, you can chew it a bit. That's absolutely fine. Okay, and once you're almost about to asphyxiate, what we want you to do is to release your nose. And this should suddenly show you the miracle of cocoa butter and craft chocolate. And it is one of the best ways of explaining to people the difference between taste and flavor. Because everybody knows that these are different words, but not everybody realizes what they are. So taste is a series of sensations you get in your mouth, in your throat, all the way down to your gut, which Vanessa is going to talk a bit more about later. But it basically detects sweetness, sourness, saltiness, bitterness, umami, kokumi, we can talk more about those later, metallic and fattiness. Now, those are completely different. What you should have got when you opened your nose, which is a sort of amazing sort of cornucopia of flavors and aromas. And that's because you actually detect flavor through your sense of smell. And it works in two different ways. One of which is called orthonasal olfaction, which is what it sounds like, which is sort of sniffing. And then the other one of which is retronasal olfaction, which is basically what happens is something melts in your mouth. So when Vanessa makes an amazing chocolate pudding, which we're going to talk more about later, or when she makes some of her amazing bread, the flavor actually is detected by your olfactory system. And the amazing thing about craft chocolate is that because it contains cocoa butter, which is properly tempered, and it melts at just below your body temperature, that's what basically releases all of the aromas and volatiles. And that's what creates flavor. And it's one of the things we want you to be focusing on as you try all these great bars that Vanessa's chosen. Right. So the next thing I want you to do, and we're only going to get you to do this once. From now on in, you don't have to do this at all. But I just want you to grab another bit of chocolate and eat it as fast as you possibly can. So just scoff it. No more than 3 or 4 seconds. Absolutely no more than 3 or 4 seconds. So everybody should just stop now, swallow it, and just quickly go back to menti.com and just say whatever sensations you get. And it is absolutely fine to say complete waste, couldn't taste anything, whatever senses, whatever feelings you've got. But I really, really want you to scoff the chocolate. Imagine it's just sort of, you've only got like 2 seconds to get it all down. But just tell us a little bit about what flavor and what sort of sensations you're getting. Crunch, excellent. Butter, salt, crunchy. Yeah, this is all very good. I mean, because this chocolate, we're going to talk about this chocolate in a bit. This is great. Absolutely fantastic. These are all absolutely what you want to be doing. Crunchy is absolutely right because it's got sourdough embedded in it, this chocolate. That's the genius of it. Okay, stop. Grab another piece of chocolate and also grab the wave. So you've got lots of bits of paper in front of you. One of the bits of paper that you've got in front of you has got Vanessa's name written on the bottom and a cocoa pod. That will give you the order of all the chocolates that we're going to try. But another one is this, which is a picture of a great wave. And this is basically just to help you think about how to appreciate craft chocolate. So the way the great wave works is now take another bit of chocolate and this time sniff it. And then sort of do what Vanessa's doing, which is just savor and enjoy it. Brilliant. And then imagine that you're going on a journey, which is basically a bit like a wave when you're in the sea and it's sort of crushing you. So the first step that you get is basically, before the wave hits you, you get a bit of texture, you get a bit of the force of the wave. And then as the wave breaks all over you, you get all these sensations of flavor and taste just sort of bursting through. And then as you surf down the wave, you should get some balance, some length and intensity and complexity. And the wonderful thing about chocolate is that you get all these different aromas and volatiles and flavors and tastes and sensations, but most of us aren't brilliant at describing them. So, most of us are really good at describing colors or music with pitch and rhythm and frequency, all that sort of stuff. But with chocolate or with bread or with wine or with anything, we actually struggle. So what we've done here is we basically tried to give you some crib sheets, because often what we find is that word's on the tip of your tongue. And so what we'd ask you to do now is basically look at the words that you've got and basically just see if any of these for the different steps make sense. So for example, when you're thinking about the texture, is it crunchy, is it satiny, is it velvety? When you think about the flavor, is it sort of jammy, is it earthy, is it nutty, is it caramelly, is it soy sauce? What sort of taste has it got? Is it sweet, is it sour, is it bitter? And then afterwards, what balance, what length, what intensity and complexity do you get? So this time, just to get you all in the practice, we'd love you to, now you're savoring it, to say what other sensations do you get from it? And we'd love you to do this as you go through. Now, it's all anonymous inside menti.com, but if basically, as you do this, you circle on the pieces of paper that you've got in front of you and you send to us at the end, we can recommend other chocolates to you. But as you're savoring this bar, I'm going to give you a little bit about why we chose this bar and also a little bit more to the history of it. So it's grown, this chocolate is crafted in Orford by a fantastic father and daughter team of Chris and Joanna Brennan. And Chris's background is that he was originally born in Jamaica, then worked for IBM for a long time. I'm just going to fill you in all this sort of stuff just so that you've got time to savor it. Going forward, Vanessa's going to be talking, so it's going to be much more fun. But you won't have to listen to me. But anyway, the great bit about this bread, this chocolate, and the reason why we've chosen it is because it's got sourdough in it. So Chris introduced sourdough after a career, first of all in IBM, then making video games. In his 60s, he decided to make sourdough bread. And then a little bit later than that, he basically, with his daughter, decided to also start making craft chocolate. But the great thing about this chocolate is that it's made for Vanessa because it's got sourdough in it. And Vanessa is the sourdough queen, as we all know. So hopefully you're all getting a bit of crunchiness, caramel, yum, earthy, gritty, cloying. Okay, that's good. I'm not sure what the huzung hao is, but it's a good phrase anyway. The other thing I would sort of say to you is that tasting and flavors are a little bit like when you see a picture and you have somebody who's very acute or very astute, and they can sort of point you out a bit of the picture that you may not have otherwise noticed. I don't like the idea of auto-suggestion in tasting, so telling you what you should be tasting, but if you see something there, sometimes it actually not only helps you articulate, but it also basically helps you actually sort of perceive something which otherwise you might have missed. Okay, so we're all getting those flavors and we're all enjoying it. And that's great. So now we're going to kick off to the important part of the evening, which is basically Vanessa. So the first chocolate we've picked is an Italian chocolate from Santone. It's made by a lovely guy called Marco Coxani, who is actually, yep, Vanessa's got it there. And while you're all tasting that, I am going to basically get Vanessa to explain to you what happens in Mount Vesuvius and why we picked an Italian chocolate to start with. So give us the roots. Come on, Vanessa. Not everybody knows that you are originally an Italian.
It explains an awful lot about me, to be fair. It's I always explain that I have kind of Italian personality, English manners and French style. So so I believe that I was actually created in the vicinity of where my grandparents are from, which is from near Vesuvius, just underneath Vesuvius.
And we couldn't quite arrange to get it erupting for you, but we did get a cloud coming.
It did erupt. As my grandmother came to the UK. And in fact, the last time it erupted, my grandmother was there and she fled. And the only way that the local inhabitants could escape was actually to get into boats and get into the sea. And she was lucky. I wouldn't be here if she hadn't have managed to get out of the way. And I think that was actually during the war. So Vesuvius is an area, it's very fertile, it's very beautiful. But the Italians have got this very deep connection to their food, and chocolate is probably really part of the sort of their love of food is a love of chocolate. And one of the most incredible Italian connections I have is actually, I spent 2 full days in a prison in Milan, actually right inside a prison in a chocolate making factory called Dolce Liberate. I'm hanging out with prisoners who were making this exquisite Italian sort of chocolate truffles, which was quite a special thing to be allowed right into the heart of the prison. What was incredible was that the Italian prison system, they bring the relatives bring the food in. And if you were well behaved, you were allowed to work in this chocolate factory. And the chocolate was exquisite, but we were heavily under guard because some of the people were lifetimers. They were, if you're in for 25 years, it's not for, for something that is not serious. And suddenly there was this kerfuffle, and I was right in the center, in the middle, in the warehouse. And the prisoner who I was with was called Vladimir. He was half Italian and half Russian. And all the prison guards just disappeared and left me alone in the center of the prison with Vladimir. And he called me over and he said, "Come ti chiama? What's your name?" And I was like, "Vanessa." And he said, "Tieni bambino." And I think he was trying to decide whether to kill me or not, because he asked me if I had any children. And I was like, "Oh my God, sì, 3 bambino, 3 babies." And he said, "Tieni bolso." And I was, "Bolso, handbag." I was like, "Sì, bolso." And he said, he called me over. And no, I'm not kidding you, Spencer. He said, not to speak to anyone, non parlare. And he, off the top of this shelf, he took all this chocolate off the most expensive shelves and was stuffing it in the back of my handbag, essentially to giving me this chocolate, but making me culpable, because essentially I was stealing chocolate from inside a prison.
Smuggling chocolate out of
stealing chocolate from inside a prison. And first of all, I was completely relieved that he wasn't going to do anything awful to me. And I realized he was just giving me chocolate for my children, not deciding whether to murder me or not, or take me hostage. And then afterwards, I actually did ask the prison guards on the way out that I'd been given this chocolate, and they said it was okay. But at the time, I was like, I don't have enough Italian to say I can't steal Italian chocolate.
Help me again. What were you doing making chocolate inside a prison?
I worked for BBC Radio 4 for the food programme as a contributor. I have done for many years. So it was part of a series of programmes on food and how it reformed people's attitude to themselves. And this really had an incredible result, because 90% of the retrained chocolatiers who were let out into society and found somewhere to work did not reoffend. And that's amazing, because mostly reoffending amongst prisoners at that point is huge. And to have that kind of level of success tells you what a little bit of training and a little bit of pride actually does for someone who wasn't given a chance in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, there is. I didn't actually know of any initiatives like that inside chocolate. I do know of. There's obviously there's a very famous roastery which is doing that in the UK, who do it.
There's a Clink as well, isn't there, in the UK? So it was part of a series on the food programme that they were doing, and I was very lucky. I was very humbled to be there, to be honest.
But well, anyway, it's given us a great chance to introduce, a lot of your friends and fans to Marco Colzani's amazing Amaro chocolate, and it comes from San Tome, which, for those of you who don't know, who may not be aware of it, San Tome was actually one of the first places where in West Africa they grew lots and lots and lots of cacao and started to export it. And actually, it's got a brilliant history and a very, very sad history, because those two islands, San Tome and Principe, are fantastic for growing cacao, but it's not indigenous there, and nobody really was used to dealing with it. And so the only way the Portuguese could get anybody to craft it or to grow it rather, was to actually import lots of slaves. And for the, for most of the 1880s, 1890s, in fact, the 1900s, this is where Cadbury's and everybody else was getting it from. Until in the early 1900s, there's a massive boycott São Tomé movement when they realized that it's all being grown by slaves. And it destroys the São Tomé agriculture when they move it all to Ghana and the West Africa, and Côte d'Ivoire. And only now is it starting to come back. There are 3 or 4 people who are basically, getting great beans. And Vittorio do it as well from Portugal. And then there's a couple of other people actually making it there too.
Spencer,
yes.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. I mean, the first thing that I noticed as I opened this one was the most exquisite fruity smell, quite overwhelming, almost sort of black currants. It was quite really perfumed. Really perfumed, like more than most chocolates. It's also. I think
we're going to rival the perfume as we go through.
But I think I love the acidity of the finish of it. I mean, I'm almost left with almost like saliva. My saliva is really sort of almost squirted at the end, not at the beginning. It's actually that acidity at the end. It feels like quite a clean finish on it.
Yeah. I mean, and the great thing is it's not astringent. It's a 78%. It has all the great earthy, leathery, almost tobacco notes that you sort of expect from São Tomé. But you are right. One of Marco's great attributes is that he really can create these sort of extraordinary, juicy flavors. And I think for the next juicy bit of your story, we should now go to France. So I'm sorry, we're going to be doing this quite quickly because we've got to get through a lot of chocolates and, more importantly, a lot of great stories. So we're going to basically go to Bonnat, the home of great French cooking down in Voiron. And this is the bar. Actually, we've got this completely politically incorrectly called Salon, but we can't get them to change it. So we will rapidly move on. But what we're going to do is basically get you to explain how you would basically crawl out of your window at 2:00 in the morning, take a bunch of Gauloises and sort of go and make bread, which is just pretty awesome. And I've got lots of good details, but I'll fill people in if you don't give me all your details in a minute. But just like, so give us a story about how you got into bakery and how the boulangerie and how you were brought up in France. And I've tried to sort of show the picture that you sent me earlier on today, sort of showing you this lovely sort of, like how the sort of pain de tradition, cuit au feu, the levain, the whole sort of concept about basically getting you into this sort of stuff and sort of, how you basically got into falling in love with bread and running past the cows and the rest of it.
So my parents bought a house in southwest France when I was about 9 years old, and I would smell about 2:00 in the morning something that would wake me up. Now, thinking back, I used to think it was bread, but it wasn't. It was the smell of wood smoke. And as that smell of wood smoke would curl up into my room, my bedroom was, from this picture on the left here, was actually about 30 feet away from the chimney. You can see above the ivy, and that would wake me up, and I would literally creep down these wooden stairs, and the kitchen was on the first floor. I would climb out of the kitchen window, shimmy down, and then this alleyway here, that's actually a picture of my daughter, but that alleyway didn't used to look quite like that. There weren't roses, and just to the right, I don't know if you can see, there's a little I can't see, I can only see you there, Spencer, but just to the right, just where Spencer is there was a cow shed. That was the cow shed. And I would run down this alleyway, avoiding the cow pats in the moonlight. And there were cows in the shed, and they would make a noise. And as they would blow and make a noise, I would think it was the devil, because I would have been about like maybe 10 or 11 years old. And I would run like my life depended on it. And I would run, go bink left, past Madame Platz, the tobacco, and I would go, there would be the square, and on the this window was lit up, and the door here had a bell on it, and I would literally almost smash through there. Like, I was so determined to go to the bakery, but almost in terror. And as I would get into the bakery, I would think, oh, I haven't been killed by some creature that's running after, in my head, something was running after me, but I must have really wanted to go to the bakery. And from there, Spencer, I used to work. So as I got there, the baker was smoking Gauloise, and he was just changing over from red wine to black coffee around about 2:00 in the morning. I'm not serious. I'm serious. He was actually the first guy who went there was an alcoholic. And I was allowed, aged 11, to make the bread with him and tip the flour in and shape the dough with him and put it in the oven. And I was allowed to use the blades and sweep up and clean up. And so by the time it got to 7:00 in the morning, I would be serving all the local people and the mayor and the tramp Jackie and everybody in between, from the mayor of the village to the tramp of the village, would come and queue to get their bread. And I knew exactly what each person wanted: a half, un demi, un bien cuit, a well-cooked one. And from there, he would load me with a trolley. And the trolleys are still the same trolleys that I used to push down there. And he used to get a trolley from out the back. And I would be given a trolley to push about 100 yards up to the hotel. And I would deliver all the breads for the hotel for that day. And then Angelique would then realize about 8:30 in the morning that she had a spare pair of hands, and she would give me things like mirabelle or chopping onions or stirring some mille flottante, and she would give me jobs for about 2 hours in the kitchen. So I worked in the French kitchen then, getting all the food ready, and then just before lunch, I'd be quite tired by then. She'd give me 2 buckets, and I'd walk the buckets on my way home, and I'd have to give one to the pigs and one to the chickens. And on the farm, because the farm it was like a triangle. There was the bakery, the restaurant, and the farm. And the farm produced from there and gave to the restaurant and the bakery all of the eggs and the milk and the cream and all of the pâtés that were served with the bread in the restaurant. And so it was this perfect triangle of rural French life that I was brought up in. And I would, by sort of midday, 1:00, I'd go home and I would then sleep. And that was my thing. And what I realized, Spencer, was in that time that the bread, which was sourdough, but we didn't call it that, it was called pain de levain or pâté fermenté, was the center of everything. To me, the bread was the center of the world. It was the center of every meal. It was what you put the cheese on. It was what you put the pâté on. It was what you mop the sauce up with. The bread was the absolute epicenter of French food and French life. And that is why I actually initially fell in love with bread, because of what it represented.
I think there's a fantastic quote that you have, which is sort of like, the French eat bread as if they really mean it. And you have this great way of comparing it to the British habit of basically having cucumber sandwiches. And there was a little bit more that we've got there too. But anyway, I think...
Just to say that the French, so the thing that made me really look up Spencer, that made me the difference, was I was going to quite a nice prep school, and we were cut up little sandwiches, and we had to sit bolt upright, eating our sandwiches with the crust cut off white, and we would sort of eat them very daintily. And as I watched the French in this restaurant, they grabbed this bread and they just ate it with complete abandon. I mean, they touched it, smelt it, made noises that like, oh, que c'est bon ce pain, oh mon Dieu, que c'est bon, oh. And they would make these noises and they would eat it and they would drag it through their sauce and oh my God, they would enjoy it. I mean, if you ever wondered what they said about Frenchmen, it's completely true. You only have to watch them eating their bread to know what a treat you're in for. So I would say from experience of watching many Frenchmen eat bread, that they enjoy it very much.
And it looks like people have enjoyed this one then too. I mean, to me, the distinctive feature of this chocolate is not just its flavor profile, but the fact that it's got this great butteriness to it. It's sort of, almost just from the tactile sense of going through. I am keen though and continuing, because now we're going to get you to basically go back to, I mean, Stefan's been making chocolate since the 1870s, 1880s with his family Bonnat, but this is actually made in the style of chocolate even before then. And we picked it because we wanted to go back a little bit further to your school exploits and Latin. So there is a the sort of, this is your husband, who it took quite a lot to get pictures of Alistair out. And there's an intriguing story about how you sort of met him while studying Latin.
Spencer, can I just ask a quick question? I don't know if it's happening on your screen, but you can't see me at all. Is that normal?
You should be able to.
No, I think it's just my voice at the moment. Oh, I think everyone else can see me. Okay. I've got Team Kimbell in the corner here saying you can see me. I just can't see myself. That's fine.
I think you've got two devices, which may be what it is.
Can you all see that? This is the Taza chocolate. So tell me, just before I tell the story about Latin, what's the link to Latin with this?
So the link to Latin is, we thought we'd go back to the roots. We go back to the origins. And the argument for this is that you have this sort of fascinating background whereby you're both sort of doing the French side of it, but you're also doing more of the, you're back in Northamptonshire, doing the traditional, educating yourself. And we wanted to have a stone ground chocolate. And this is where we thought we'd
But this is like the beginning of how chocolate came about then?
This is the beginning of how chocolate came about. This is how the beginning of your family life with Alistair came about, and how he basically, you won all the prizes in Latin and he I don't think did quite as well. So back to the roots of your family and the roots of chocolate bars back 1847, Fry's world's first chocolate bar, because they worked out how to take the cocoa butter and stick it back and make chocolate with it.
So going to the story about Alistair and I first remember meeting Alistair when I think I would have been 5 years old, possibly 4 or 5. And I first met him because our brothers were at play school together, our younger brothers. And we were then at school together. And I was absolutely top of the class at Latin. And our teacher was called Major Cernberg.
That's the one.
And Major Cernberg, so it was quite a lovely prep school. He was just the most gorgeous man. And I got 20 out of 20 every week, because if you got 20, you got chocolate. I mean, I'm talking like this was my sole motivation. So, but my husband was not motivated by chocolate. And in fact, Major Cernberg actually refused to teach him. He was so naughty, Alistair, that he was thrown out of Latin. So whenever we get to a pub quiz, I'm always the one who rocks with the Latin, because I was top of my class.
Which
there
is
you are.
Awesome. But yes, but anyway, so this is, we would call this one, this is what we would definitely sort of ask you to do in a slightly different way.
Wow.
So very, very gritty. Now, if you've got your boxes anywhere near you, and by the way, Vanessa is not sort of throwing chocolate to her dog. She's basically
I've got 3 children in here, and they're like, throw it.
Close by. And this is what we would sort of call a sort of, a Marmite bun. It doesn't have Marmite in it, I stress, but it's basically something which is extremely different in texture to how you'd normally get chocolate.
I wasn't expecting to like it, Spencer, but actually I do, because I actually thought it tastes like bananas to me. Oh my God.
Yes, bananas, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I absolutely agree with that. But the reason why we picked this is because, to me, one of the brilliant things about your sourdough is the texture. Not just the flavor, not just the taste, which are absolutely outstanding, but it has this, it's as unlike to sort of, the sort of the mother, the sort of the normal bread that we get.
Yeah.
As this chocolate's texture is to, say, the Bonnats. And I just think that texture is something which we so underappreciate in lots of different cuisine. In chocolate's case, it's actually relatively simple once you give people a stone ground one to explain to them what they're looking for in a classically tempered, conched and ground bar. But I think with bread, you do the same thing.
So that's really interesting, because your initial reaction is that it's slightly gritty. But one of the things that you get when you first introduce people to sourdough, I mean, most of the people who are on here will have heard about sourdough. They'll know sourdough and they'll think, this is amazing. But the reality is that if you're used to a very commercial product, this is quite challenging to the senses. And when you first get that kind of almost sandy grittiness, there's something like, oh, this isn't what I'm expecting. But actually, I have gone back for a second piece, because it's mouth-wateringly delicious, and that texture is actually very interesting. I find it, I almost want to kind of almost like eat it like a carrot, just biting bits off to enjoy more of the texture.
Yeah. Now, can I get everybody to play a game? If you've got your boxes with you, and if in your boxes you've still got the Velcro, there should be 2 bits of Velcro affixed to some of your boxes. And I think I forgot to say this to you beforehand, but if you've got a box, it should have some Velcro in it. And if you can just touch the Velcro, the smooth bit and then the rough bit, or if you haven't got that, just basically grab something which is smooth and rough. So if you've got a partner with a beard, that always works quite well. But basically, just try rubbing your fingers as you taste the chocolate and see what happens. Or as you, even next time you get some of Vanessa's amazing sourdough, try touching something which is smooth and then try touching something which is gritty and grainy and see if it changes your perceptions of it. But because I think it may do. So right. So I think what we're going to do now is move on to.
I'm going to ask you a very quick
Yes.
question, Spencer. I've never seen anything like this. It's not my imagination, but it's sparkling like little diamonds are in it from here. Is that something you've ever seen before?
So the background to it. So let's give you the background. Let's go the whole story, because if everyone's got the Velcro, they can start playing with that one too.
Amazing. Look, it's actually sparkling.
Yes, it's the sugar crystals. It's the sugar crystals sparkling back at you. So it's not ground. It's stone ground as opposed to ground and conched. So grinding and conching, which sounds like something which you sort of do on the dance floor, was actually invented by the Swiss about 40 years after Fry basically worked out how to add the cocoa butter back into the chocolate bars, which the Dutch wanted to take out the cocoa butter to stop it getting stuck in their beards and make easier drinking chocolate. And anyhow, the first sort of chocolates that you would have had, the chocolate bars would have been like this. And if you go to Modica in Italy, you'll still get chocolate like this. And if you go to lots of South America, they still actually sort of make this. And of course, Taza, the name of the bar for this one, Taza actually means sort of drinking chocolate in Spain, because it's what people would use to sort of then make their drinking chocolate. But it's sort of quite interesting that we've got, everything from the Japanese people saying it's oishi and delicious to people saying they really don't like it, the least favorite. And that is the way this bar sort of works for people. But now we're going to get down to the serious stuff, because this is when you almost stop being able to eat and enjoy food, because you have this this is when you really sort of start to get into your microbiome and fermentation. So we picked a bar from Mexico made with a fantastic name, Kraak, which is apparently what the Dutch do when they eat chocolate. Kraak or croque or whatever, you can see it on the other one. And it's a 6-day fermentation with only 1 turn. So it's basically, it's sort of quite a tight fermentation. It's going to be a bit more pristine. If you ever want to compare fermentations, we have both the 6-day and the 5-day with 2 turns from Mark Schimmel on the site. But what I really wanted to do is, so Vanessa, I never realized quite how you got into the microbiome. And I know that you know Tim Spector pretty well and all that sort of stuff. But I would love to basically get you to, just tell us, we picked this bar because fermentation is something which is dear to your own heart as a baker. But also because your own experiences with your gut, it almost stops you being able to work in bakery, doesn't it?
So I trained and qualified as a baker, and then just as I was kind of just really beginning to take off as you're newly qualified, I was given a very, very large dose of metronidazole, which are specifically an antibiotic designed to actually really kind of bring the microbes in your gut right down. I believe it was actually part of having my wisdom teeth out. And within a matter of a week or 2, I couldn't eat bread anymore. And after quite a unpleasant sort of 4 or 5 weeks, I went to the doctor and described my symptoms, and he basically advised me not to eat gluten anymore. He blamed it on gluten. And I was put on a prescription for about 4 years. And so I had to give up being a baker. Now, if I take that forward, then to 5 years later, I hadn't eaten any bread. I'd had to give up my job that I loved, my career, the thing that I'd fallen in love with, and I trained for 3 years. And I was pretty angry about it and pretty upset about it, because in those days, the 1992, 93, there was no gluten-free market. It was the most disgusting, revolting stuff you could possibly imagine. And I'd taken my husband back to France, and I'd actually was avoiding my French ex-fiancé. We're now all friends, but I'd finally gone back to France, and I walked past the bakery that you've just seen, and there was Hervé, who I'd been working with there. And he spotted me, and I was on my own, and he ran out and he's like, "Salut, bonjour, Vanessa, ça va, qu'est-ce qui se passe?" And gave me this beautiful warm miche. Now, this was like giving, someone who's starving something, because I hadn't eaten any bread and it was warm. And I literally ran past the shop, up the alleyway you saw, up the steps into the kitchen. And Alistair wasn't there, my husband wasn't there. And I literally set to Spencer on this bread, like something like I've seen out of 9.5 weeks. I mean, there was me, there was the bread, there was the butter, and some Marmite. And the miche was big. Oh yeah, I'm a bit of a Marmite fan. I'm more of a salty and savoury girl than I am sweet. I'd far sooner something salty. And Alistair walked back in, and I literally had pogged literally half one of these miches. And he walked in, and this was supposed to be romantic. I think I was about 26, 27. And he just went, "What have you done?" And I was like, "Oh my God." Now, the thing was, Spencer, this house was not a quiet house. You could hear someone coughing upstairs. So let me tell you, the idea of what was going to happen next was just too horrific for words, because there's nothing romantic about what happened to me when I ate bread. It was a digestive disaster. And not only that, I would also have 2 lots of symptoms I now know were IBS and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So I would not only have the digestive symptoms, but I would also have all of the symptoms of a bad headache, a muzzy head. I wasn't thinking properly, and all my joints would seize up, and I would be tired, like someone had completely drained my batteries. And I sat and I was like, oh no, and what have I done? What have I done? And I was like, braced myself for the next 8 or 10 hours for the inevitable horror that was going to happen. And it didn't. And suddenly it was like, I can eat bread. I can eat this bread. So I literally spent 2 weeks really doubling the national GDP of the French, bread industry, eating every literally ounce of bread I could get my hands on. And I came back to England, popped straight off to the supermarket, bought some bread, sat at the kitchen table, ate a sandwich. And you know what? It was like instant. Within 10 minutes of eating it, I knew something had gone wrong. And I ended up in bed for 3 days. And that's when I went to the doctors. And I sat in the doctor, and he's a very wise looking doctor. And he leaned back, and I said, "Why can I eat this French bread and not this English bread?" And he leaned back and he sort of stroked his chin. He said, "I've absolutely no idea." And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." So fast track 20 years on, and it is over 20 years now. I was teaching, and I just finished last year. I taught the Royal College of General Practitioners, nutrition and digestibility of bread. And that means 12 doctors in here. I don't know how much you can see in here, but this is the sourdough school that you're in at the moment. And this is actually where I teach in here. And the reason for the gut microbiome, as any of you who saw the very amazing chocolate tasting that Tim Spector did, was Tim actually identified back in 2016 with Map My Gut that my gut microbial diversity was less than 2% diverse. And that meant that our in-house GP here identified that I'd actually, Spencer, had a horrific 57 lots of antibiotics. So I actually knew from way back in the 1990s that my gut microbiome had been destroyed, but the science then caught up with it. And so my main mission and work has been in bread, understanding fermentation and how that facilitates more nutritious bread, less inflammatory bread, as well as more delicious bread. But specifically, I actually create and teach people to make sourdough that is actually nourishing. But what we now know, which is very important, is that the gut microbiome is the center, the epicenter of your immune system. And with COVID and some of the some of the understanding of how immunity and our gut microbiome are linked. And they think anything between 70 and 90% of the immune system is based in the gut. It has never, ever been more important to nourish our gut. Now, the thing about chocolate, and I'm going to talk about chocolate now, is chocolate features very heavily in my bread. In fact, just over to the right here, I've got a blend. If you give me 1 second, Spencer. This blend here uses your cacao nibs. This is one of the blends that I use here in the school. This is a chocolate and rye. This has got your cocoa nibs in.
Wow.
And it's got toasted coriander in here, rye, pink peppercorns, fennel, and a little bit of dulse in there. That creates diversity in the bread. I don't know if you can see that. But, and it's got a chili in there that goes extremely well with the chocolate and the rye. So one of the reasons I am absolutely mad about chocolate isn't actually just for the taste and flavour. One of the reasons that I'm crazy about it is that chocolate has been shown specifically to increase one of the positive microbes in the gut called bifidobacterium. And bifidobacterium is one of the good guys. So when you eat chocolate, it thrives.
Yeah. What
bifidobacterium does is it manufactures something called butyrate. Now, butyrate is the same taste and smell as butter because it's in butter and parmesan. But in your gut, it actually helps create like an engine oil that goes around the gut lining, that protects the gut lining, protects the integrity of the gut. Now, when people come here to the sourdough school and they say, I'm struggling to digest bread, I get bloating, and all those symptoms I was telling you about earlier, one of the things I ask them to do is increase their consumption of dark chocolate. And the reason for this is because I want to facilitate higher levels of flavonoids and actually increase this good bifidobacterium to make the butyric acid that helps support the integrity of the gut lining, and that helps lower inflammation in the body, and that helps to support immune health. Right. Now, I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about immune health, and by incorporating chocolate into your chocolate bakes, chocolate cakes, puddings, pies, actually incorporating a little bit of chocolate in your actual bread itself, you are bolstering your microbiome, you are bolstering your immune system, and you are nourishing the positive gut microbes. And I personally can't recommend having a little bit of dark chocolate in your diet every day as part of a way of eating and a way of really, it's not exactly punishment, is it?
I think you are right. So I think I'm slightly worried that people, I want to quickly come on to the chocolate, but one other quick comment is that the French, of course, you know, for them, breakfast is a bit of sourdough, pain au vin with a bit of chocolate.
Absolutely. That is absolutely correct.
We have pain au chocolat, which is very different because it's much, you know, it's got all the butter and the pastry and everything, but actually sourdough and dark chocolate is brilliant. And the one thing which will actually get the French to riot is changing the price of Nutella. But it is a bit different. Now, I was slightly worried that people got this one, they may have got a milk one, but I don't know. We'll have to sort of, if anyone did not get the dark chocolate, just send us a picture of what you got, and then we'll sort of go from there. So I'm a bit worried about that, but we've got to move on, and we're now going to take you. This bar is sort of going completely the other way. This is our first milk bar, so if anyone's lactose sensitive, they can't have it. But we picked it because of the vanilla, because vanilla is the device which basically brings out the journalist in you. And it's the most extraordinary story about how basically, you know, again, Alistair must be one of the most sort of, you know, he's a brilliantly supportive gentleman, but basically you sort of announced to him midst of nothing really, apropos of nothing, that you were going to basically go to Africa and make a program and start getting involved in vanilla. So just explain how this all works.
Okay, this is quite a funny story. So I got 3 little children, and I was writing a book, my first book, and I needed some vanilla, and I contacted a lady called Lulu Sturdy in Uganda, and she posted me some vanilla. But she didn't just post me some vanilla. she posted me a box of vanilla, and I was so taken aback by her generosity. And I said to her, quite not flippantly, I said, if you ever need anything, please ask me. And about, I don't know, maybe a year later, she phoned me up. She said, you know how you said to call you if I needed anything? And she said, I said, yeah. She said, well, I do need something. She said, I'm a Buddhist and I'm going on a silent retreat. She said, and that means no tweeting for 6 months. She said, could you be me for 6 months on the Twitter? And I went into a bit of a blind panic and said, no, I didn't think I could, because I don't think I could fake being in Uganda, and I didn't know enough about vanilla to be her. And she said, well, why don't you just jump on a plane about, next week and come? And in the meantime, I just that day made a phone call in the very first instance to Radio 4 food programme. And I'd said to the guys there, hey, I'm working in local radio. I've done about 3 years of BBC. Would you be interested in me doing anything? And they burst out laughing and said, you and 100 others today, love. Oh, nicely, but it was they were amused. But do come back to us if they've got anything interesting. So I didn't phone my husband when Lulu said this. I said, okay, I'll come to Uganda. So I picked up the phone to Radio 4. This is how I started working for them, and said, I'm going to Uganda next week, to right on the Rwenzori Mountains on the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they went, oh, yes, please, we'd love some recordings. So my husband walked in that night, and he'd had a long day at work, and he said, oh dear, how are you? And I was like, I'm good. I'm going to Uganda next Friday. And he was like, pardon? I was like, yes, no, I'm off to Uganda on Friday, which is, your wife doesn't normally say this. And at which point on Thursday evening, we sat in front of the television. And the thing was, Spencer, that I'd been really brave up until that moment. And then I went really quiet. And he looked at me and he said, are you all right? And I went, no. He said, well, you've gone a bit quiet. I said, have you bitten off more than you can chew? And I literally, the tears came, and I was like, I'm going to Africa tomorrow, to Uganda, and I've never been anywhere like this. I said, the closest I've ever been to Uganda is buying a pineapple in Waitrose. Needless to say, I did get on a plane to meet a woman who I met on the internet in Uganda, and I lived to tell the tale.
And this is the lady. This is the lady.
Is an extraordinary woman. These are the farmers, and the fair trade is actually a game changer. The farmers themselves it's a cash crop, like cocoa. Okay, so what people don't understand about a cash crop is that it's the difference between, I'll tell you what the difference is between. The difference, when I asked the farmer, and it wasn't this farmer, it was another farmer, I said to him, what is the difference between fair trade and not? And he just called these 2 children over to him, and they were this gorgeous little children, same age as mine. And he simply said to me that the difference that fair trade had made to him was that when his 2 girls were both ill at the same time, he didn't have to choose which one would most likely to survive to medicate. Now you think about what that actually means, Spencer. Think about that. That made my blood run cold. Choose which child to save. This isn't, I mean, I really can't emphasize this strong enough. This man who's vanilla that we buy in the supermarket in the UK, the difference between whether or not we chose a fair trade one or a non-fair trade one was this man's choice between which child was more likely to survive if he could medicate them. The cash crop, the little bit of extra money that we pay when we support a farmer direct, isn't about our ego. It's not about our feeling good. It's about the direct action and consequences of farmers at ground level on their families. And the difference is between some places, it's life and death. It's between hope and despair. It's on a level that unless you've stood with the farmers and seen them and looked in their eyes and seen, these are the people who they're poor, but I'll tell you something for absolutely nothing. And you know this, Spencer. They don't want charity. They don't want to be felt sorry for. They're the proudest people you would ever meet. They simply want a fair price for a fair day's work, which is no more than you or I would want. And when we start connecting through what we're eating back to the people on the ground, we'll suddenly realize that these farmers aren't just people who are producing their food. They're also custodians of the soil and the land and the planet. And when we start looking after eating chocolate, what you're actually doing right now, and I think you know how strongly I feel about this, when you start thinking about your food and you start buying food that counts, you're actually a food activist. So every single one of you right now, every one of you who I've either invited to come and eat with us, or you've just sort of stumbled across this, you are, in this instant, you are food activists. And you can be an activist simply by choosing to eat food that has been sourced fairly. And it just changes your whole mindset if you understand that.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, for us, that's the reason why we are so passionate about this. It's very rare that you find a product like the one that you craft with your bread or the one that we sell with our chocolate. But this bar in particular, not only has it got the vanilla in it, but the other great thing about it is it's even better than fair trade. It was set up by some Peace Corps volunteers in Madagascar, because they, even though in Madagascar, you know, the average price for a ton of cacao is somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. That's not enough. That's not even that basically means the average farmer in West Africa gets paid less than $1 a day when they need $2 or $3. This sort of cacao costs $5,000 to $8,000 a ton, but even better than that, it's actually made in Madagascar. So it's, you know, it's an estimated 4 or 5 times better even than fair trade pricing, because you keep so much more inside the country.
This is something that Mott was very passionate about, in that fair trade didn't go far enough.
Because I think we should, you know, one other actual aside for all of you who are worried about it, just be aware of one quick trick though, which is that actually this chocolate has got no more added sugar in it than any of the dark chocolates you've got. And the reason for that is that we've caramelized the milk. So one of the interesting things is that you don't actually need to add sugar to make interesting chocolate to eat. You can actually just use the milk powder and caramelize it. But there is a trick to be played, which you all ought to be aware of, which is you need to look at the ingredients on a chocolate bar. And if you see sugar, salt, and fat all put together, which is what you will see on this one, because it's got a hint of salt in it too, that's the reason why. My bet is that you've probably all savored the dark chocolate bars so far, but once you start eating this milk chocolate bar, it's much harder to resist it. So, and the reason for this is that it's basically using this thing called the bliss point, which if you come to one of our sort of more regular craft chocolate Welcome to the Revolution tastings, we will go into a bit more. But we should move on, because the next bar is, we have to thank you. For a long time we've been selling this bar, but then we couldn't get hold of it for a bit. And so originally, when we actually first spoke to you, what we were actually going to taste with these 2 bars, which you probably all still have in your boxes. But the bar that we really want to talk about now is the Grenada Chocolate Company bar, because this is, you know, when you are really getting into craft chocolate in, you know, so far this has been the food history, but now you are heart of craft chocolate.
So Spencer, can I just flip back to that photograph of Mott with the Tres Ombre? So this Tres Ombre ship here is actually the same ship you can see on the front of this bar.
Yeah, it's the one which we use.
These two bars, if I just hold those up, can you all see them? They're intrinsically linked. Now, I met Mott through my friendship with Chantal Cody. I've been friends with Chantal, looking back now, I could be 15 or 16 years. And about 8 or 9 years ago, Chantal, when I was writing my first book, it could be longer than that, actually, it could be 10 years, she introduced me to Mott. And I went out to meet him in Grenada, and I connected to him on an extraordinary level. I met this incredible man. He was he was a pioneer. He was an anarchist, and I mean a proper anarchist. You can see his barefoot there. Yeah. He was known as the barefoot chocolatier, and he was absolutely, totally, and utterly, and completely uncompromising in his vision for chocolate. And you see a lot of the bars that you sell actually are what we call bean to bar. But Chantal Cody, who actually has an OBE from the Queen for her work in chocolate, and is possibly, I think, the grandmother of the chocolate movement, and the grand-mère, as in the big grand-mère being grandmother. And Mott actually changed the whole industry, because what Mott did was something called tree to bar. Yeah. And so we went right up into the mountains and picked the cocoa took it barefoot across the river, and he had commissioned a house in the top of the hills in Grenada that was right opposite the Prime Minister's house. And there he had, over many years, actually created this almost Willy Wonka-like chocolate factory, where he was originally an engineer from New York. And he actually left New York before he'd finished. He would have been the valedictorian of his year, but he left because he was walking to university one day and said good morning to one of the chaps that he'd said good morning to every day. And I believe from what he said to me that the chap who he said good morning to didn't say good morning because he'd frozen to death in the night. And that moment when Mott realised the inequality between his luxurious life and this man who had frozen to death in the night outside his home in New York, set Mott on a completely different path. And he actually put his engineering skills to use and dropped out of university, and for about 10 years went around and just mended boilers in houses so people could have running water and warmth in the freezing cold of the New York City. He then ended up in Grenada making this chocolate factory. So you can see this guy is not someone who's going to accept the society as it is. And he saw this cocoa all over Grenada just lying, rotting on the floor. And he realized the tragedy of the Grenadan industry as people were moving away from the traditional kind of farming. And in Grenada, they make cocoa tea. And I can't say it because they say it much better than me, but cocoa tea. And this cocoa tea is essentially chocolate. And this was what made him, and it was incredible, Spencer, because you know, there was this ball of fire that would go across one part of it, and he'd sort of reimagined a coffee grinder, and then he built his own sort of machine that sorted everything. It was incredible. It was like a cross.
I mean, he was an extraordinary engineer.
Between Wallace and Gromit and Wallace and Gromit and Willy Wonka, the real deal. Anyway, we got 50,000 bars onto this ship. He hand built the refrigeration and put solar power on it. And we sailed 50,000 bars, and I got to do the sail the first bit. My husband didn't leave me on the ship with the Tres Ombre, even though actually Arian, the founder of the Tres Ombre, is one of my best friends. And we sailed it all the way back to Portsmouth. I actually had to meet them at the other end. I wasn't allowed to do the 3 months on the ship. But we then met with this chocolate, which is extraordinary. I mean, listen to the way it snaps, okay? Just listen to this. Just listen. Oh my God, that snap is so beautifully tempered. That is, and the shine on it is a sign of this incredible tempering that takes part. And the smell, it smells like fruit. It's so, that just takes me straight back there. And this chocolate with its fruitiness, and it's absolutely exquisite, was zero carbon. And this chocolate,
it's actually even better, isn't it? Because it's actually the chocolate back. No, I
to Waitrose horror, each and every single bar is hand sorted. Each cocoa bean is hand sorted. And then they had to handwrite the use-by date on because they are individually hand-created, these bars of chocolate. And he just changed the whole industry. And then, unfortunately, I did all the BBC Radio 4 food programme recordings. You can listen to it, Grenada Chocolate Radio 4. I had a phone call about 2 weeks after he was back from someone in Grenada to say that he had died in an accident. He was mending, I believe, the solar panels in the Belmont plantation, and he was instantly killed. He was electrocuted. I think, from what I understand, he had the AC and the DC mixed up, and it wiped me out, Spencer. This man who had really shown me what it meant not to compromise, to have that vision. I found someone who was in my tribe who had he wanted to change the world of chocolate and change the paradigm of chocolate with no compromise. And that's how I feel about bread. My job is to change the paradigm of bread. And he actually, I think even the conversation we're having right now is a mottism to me. And so you'll see I carry an amulet around my head, which is a Tibetan prayer locket. And it's nailed one to the top of the Tres Ombre, that ship you've just seen that brings in this chocolate. So this, you won't realise it, but you're all linked to Mott if you eat this chocolate. And also Chantel has one of these. And he's in the mortar of this building. His ashes are in here. So Chantel bought me his ashes in a ketchup bottle, actually. And he now is going to spend eternity between my... Anyway, I'm sure he'd be very happy with that.
But the great thing is that you've basically helped Chantal and James now make this chocolate back available, because for a long time...
So right now, as we are speaking, this extraordinary company in Edward and the team there are having to face unprecedented financial issues over COVID. So with the industry, the tourist industry just imploding, the COVID restrictions, the difficulty isn't in producing the chocolate because they've got the chocolate. The difficulty is, as you just said, getting hold of it, because they can't, everyone on Grenada is competing to export their chocolate. Now, unless we, and you're my hero right now, Spencer, because you brought this chocolate a last minute on here so I could talk about this. Unless we step up and support a company like this and actually make a difference and put our investment into our chocolate and into the luxuries, into a small brand like this, they just simply won't be there when we get past COVID, because cash flow and being able to pay the bills for these small companies is the difference between them surviving and not. This isn't about profit. I mean, profit is almost a comical word. The profit is reinvested. It's actually about a principle and a vision and a company that represents the cocoa farmers themselves own the chocolate company. That in its own right 10 years ago was unheard of. There was only one other company when I went out there that did that, and that's sold out to a conglomerate already. So let's be honest, this is about great, incredible, award-winning, exquisitely hand-conched, handmade, incredible chocolate, and it needs supporting. So I am utterly grateful that it's on here.
No, I mean, as you sort of said, look, here's the reason. It's very, very rare. This is a bar slightly more expensive than some of our other bars. It's £6, £5.95, but it tastes better, as you've explained. The bifida, your gut, it's so much better for you. There's no junk in it. And it's better for the farmers and the planet. It really is sort of good karma all the way around. Now, we are slightly over time, but the one thing I do want to refer to is that you are an extraordinary, baker, but you also have an amazing series of books out and an amazing cook. And so cooking with chocolate is another thing that we've done. We're not going to do it tonight, although I am at some point going to get you back to basically I don't know how we're going to do it on Zoom, but we will make it work. But we have given everybody a sort of some Menacao cooking chocolate, which is basically the same beans as the bar, the milk chocolate bar that we had earlier. And we're going to try and bring much more of that in it. But and we will send out everybody who's attended some recipes from your amazing new book. But I want to give people a chance to sort of ask questions to you too. And the other thing I'd love just to do is, I would love to know which of the bars that everybody's enjoyed. So sort of, have a quick look through all the different bars. They're basically in the order that you tasted them. So the Pump Street Sourdough, the Amaro San Tome, the Bonnat, the Taza Cinnamon, the Kraak, which is the fermentation one, which I think a few people were a bit worried about, the Menacao milk, which is the milk, and then the last one that you've just tried, the Grenada Chocolate Company 71. And then we're going to have a quiz. And the quiz is a bit unfair. The quiz basically will reward all those people who've been to one of our other chocolate tastings, because the questions are quite similar to that. But it's fascinating to sort of see which ones are sort of coming through. What about you, Vanessa? Which one? I think we can't let you, I know that you're going to vote for the Grenada Chocolate Company because that's the one dearest to your heart. So let's take that as being one. Which is the other one that you would have a vote for? Which are the other ones which have surprised you and interested you?
Well, I can show this to you. The Menacao was so gorgeous that when you first put it on, I actually just went and bought. I mean, I'm a chocolate fan. I actually just went and bought the Menacao. That shows you how much I like it.
But you've now got the Menacao. You're actually selling the Menacao to all of your
This is before you and I actually even talked about it. I think these are probably, well, they're in date still. So, but by the way, chocolate doesn't really go out of date.
It's like red wine.
No, I was just about to say it doesn't go out of date. Mott had a theory that it got better and better with age.
It does. Well, the cocoa butter, it moves from being a liquid to being a solid, so it has a slightly different mouthfeel, and you do have to be careful as to how you keep it.
Yeah, so I think the Menacao I particularly love. I actually think, Spencer, if I'm honest, you've put an extraordinary range of chocolates on this evening, and I love the fact that there's that difference between them all.
Well, it's your life, which has been so varied, and you've done so many different things, which gave us the opportunity to do. I mean, it's very, very rare that I don't think we're ever going to get anybody else who I can basically get to tell us their Latin class experiments. and I still do love the story of you running through the cows mooing at you to go to work at the ripe old age of 11 years old. Right. I think what we should now do is have a quiz, and then we're going to open it up for people to be able to quiz you with more questions. So, right. We're going to have 6 questions. It's all anonymous. We don't know who you are. And basically we would, just to sort of see, this is just a general knowledge question about chocolate, just to basically get you all warmed up for Christmas, because there's going to be lots of quizzes, I'm sure. And you can basically have your own quizzes for chocolate. And I'm going to basically pick on Vanessa to basically give us the answers to the different questions as we go through. No, I probably won't. Right. Okay, so the first question. Right, so the Aztecs did lots and lots and lots of things with chocolate. They used lots in religious purposes and stuff like that. But there's one thing which, even though South America did a lot of it, we don't think they did it with chocolate. Currency, spices, smoking, or fattening up a male warrior. They did fatten up a male warrior. There are lots of Mayan codices which show it.
I was going to say smoke it.
Yeah, you'd have got it right. You'd have got it right. And they did mix it with spices, and they also used to mix it with blood. You can find out more.
They really fattened up the male warriors.
Yeah, they did. They basically, there's a codex from 1564 from the Spaniards, but there's also some other evidence from the actually before. There's some Mayan.
Yeah, never trust an Aztec who's plying you with chocolate.
No, they're definitely not. But I mean, it was mainly males, actually. Which
right. Oh, if you're a girl, it's okay. Okay, fair enough.
Right. Now, this is a bit more geographically challenged. You have to realize that chocolate grows 0 to 20 degrees of the equator, and wine is 28 to 52 degrees of the equator. And you need rainforest to grow cacao. So even though France has got lots of provinces which are abroad and they all count as being French citizens, France does not have any rainforest the last time we looked. Yeah, we love this question. Okay, Vanessa, which one? Would you have got Australia?
Well, I've been in the rainforest in Australia, so I'm a little weirded out by that. I got married in Australia.
Ah, that we didn't get into.
On the Great Barrier Reef.
In there too.
Yeah, no, we snuck off, and a Liverpudlian guy married us on the beach.
That's a very good thing to do. So for those of you who are interested in trying Chilean chocolate, this is an awesome Chilean chocolate by Mark Garrett of Obolo, but I'm afraid Chile is too far south. They get their beans from Pangoa in Peru, but they are delicious. So maybe next time we do a tasting with Vanessa, we'll basically have some of that there.
Ooh.
Right.
I like this.
Who produced the first commercial chocolate bar for eating? So that's not the reason why we put the Taza in there, but I did mention it a number of times at that point. Is it Cadbury's, Fry's, Godiva, or Hershey? Well done, everybody who listened and got Fry's. That is awesome. Very, very, very well done. I'm really impressed. Right, now we talked a lot about bifida and butyrates, but butyric acid is the stuff, as Vanessa said, which basically, well, I'll give it away. It's in Parmesan. But Now, interestingly, it is in Hershey's milk chocolate because of lipilosis. Come to our chocolate tasting and you'll find out more as to why. This is the reason why in Europe we all think that Hershey's smells of vomit, because that's the other thing that butyric acid smells like. It's very, very strange. And believe it or not, you do actually sweat it out, only under your armpits though. But dark craft chocolate bars, no, not in any of those. It's a very, very strange story.
Well, I'm just going to say, my daughter's just made off with the milk chocolate Tres Ombre bar, and I've just realised that it's Arian Ship, who's one of my best friends, who's on the front cover, and she's just like...
There you go. She's got it. It's a great bar, actually, too. So I hope you all enjoy savouring. I'm sorry we didn't have time to taste it all. Now, we mentioned this at the very, very beginning. It's just to sort of get you to appreciate when you're eating great bread, when you're having great chocolate, you've just got to basically figure it out. Which one of these is not a taste? And you should come to another. Yeah, well done, everybody got astringency. This is definitely a bunch of cooks. You can tell these are good people. Right, and then this is the last question, and this is the only one where there are 2 correct answers. So there are 2 correct answers here. Is it Great British Bake Off? Is it Sunday Brunch? Or is it Vanessa? Or is it her sourdough school? Yeah. So that one you all did well, right? Let's have a drum roll and let's sort of see who do we send more chocolate to in a minute.
Oh.
So whoever XB is, send us in a screenshot. This is all basically...
That's like really fast.
It's very fast. They did very, very well. So send us that in and we'll send you some more chocolate in a minute. But I think at this point, what we should probably do is just invite you all to sort of, like read the label, make certain that you're doing what Vanessa was saying. Because it does taste better. It is better for you. It's better for the planet. Make sure you know where the chocolate comes from. That's the main thing. Just like you know where all Vanessa's ingredients come from, you know where her bread is made, etc. You have to know the same with chocolate. And if you want to know more about that, come to one of our regular virtual chocolate tastings. And please do cook with it because it's amazing. And then join Vanessa's online course, join our course. But most importantly of all now, please, unfortunately, because this is a webinar, we can't sort of like unmute you, I don't think. So if you've got questions to Vanessa, we are slightly over time, but I'm sure that Vanessa will stay with us for a tiny bit more and just fire any questions that you've got to her. We will send emails, and if you've got questions afterwards too, send them into us. But if you've got any questions now, I will read them out, either using the Q&A or using the...
whilst people are typing the questions, I'd like to say first off to anyone who's watching, thank you for taking the time for doing that. I also want to say massive, huge thank you to Spencer. Now, Spencer's very modest about this, but he actually knows pretty much each and every farmer and every single bar of chocolate that he has on sale at Cocoa Runners. And the principles with which he doesn't just choose bars for being ethical, but he also very carefully tastes them and makes sure that they are up to Cocoa Runners standards. And I have actually been, I will say this very much, I've been a personally private customer of Cocoa Runners since probably about a couple of weeks after they opened, paying the normal subscription because I absolutely love Cocoa Runners. I love what they stand for. I love the surprises every month. You can see my boxes behind me, and to say Spencer has not paid me to say this, but I think he's a food hero. Spencer, I'm so grateful for being on here.
I mean, one of the best Christmas presents I got about 4 years ago was your first sourdough book, and I know what I'm getting for this Christmas, so I'm extremely excited by it too.
So yeah, I love what you do, and I'm very, very delighted to be on here. So if anyone's got any questions, please do shout.
There's one from Stefan, which I'm going to start with, even though it's not the first one, because it's a fantastic question. Hi, which is, what is your absolute favorite chocolate to go with a real sourdough bread?
Oh, okay. I mean, there is no chocolate that is closer to my heart than the Grenada chocolate bar. I think that that bar and my link to Mock Green is so deep. It's almost it's part of my DNA. Is that understanding of what it means to eat chocolate. I think now my favorite chocolate now, it is the Grenadian chocolate bar, but I think anything that has and delivers cocoa and flavonoids to someone who's eating it is good. So I look for good quality chocolate and that pays people fairly. That really, that those two things matter. And then after that, it's personal preference. But for me, it still has to be, for me, the out and out winner is that Grenada chocolate bar, always, because of that connection. And I love the taste and flavour of it. It's fruity and delicious. So that's my favourite, Stefan.
And also, you've got a bunch of other favourites inside that range, haven't you? Because I know that you love the nibs, and I know you love the...
But I also really fell in love with your Menacao as well, separately from, before all this, and I was buying it. So I think the Menacao 60, is it 63?
63% with salt.
I've got to be honest, the couverture, because it's in buttons, is absolutely extraordinary. And that's what I really
That actually brings us on to the next question, which is tips for cooking with chocolate.
Oh, right, okay. Buy double, because you'll eat half of it. If it's good chocolate and you want to eat it, then you can cook with it. That's the first tip. My second tip is be very careful if you're melting chocolate not to burn it. So melting it over a bain-marie is good, but don't get water in it. If you want to actually set your chocolate, look at the way that you temper your chocolate, which is you melt it, so you bring the temperature up. And then you bring the temperature down by adding in some whole chocolate, and then you kind of stir it until it's set point. And it's worth looking at the temperatures of the chocolate and having a digital thermometer if you want to temper your chocolate. It's quite useful. And then use chocolate in savoury ways. So some of the best things I've ever done with chocolate is making a really beautiful lamb tagine and adding 3 or 4 pieces of dark chocolate in a lamb tagine. It really is that sort of flavour that thickens up the gravy and it sweetens it slightly. And people go, oh, this is so amazing. It's so delicious. And they can't quite identify what it is. They won't go with chocolate. There's just a depth and a richness to it. So think of chocolate in other ways other than simply chocolate cake. There are things that you can do. And then also with cooking chocolate, I really, really, really love making proper hot chocolate using hot chocolate. I think there's nothing more satiating or more delicious than proper real hot chocolate, except if you put a little bit of nutmeg with it or orange in there, zest. But real hot chocolate is just incredible. And it's not sweet, it's actually, and it's far from sweet. So using real cooking chocolate to make hot chocolate with. There you go, tips.
I think those are all fantastic. I think the tempering one is absolutely spot on there too. So we've got 3 or 4 more questions that I'm going to try and do too. So there's one from Pauline, which is what's the best way to store chocolate? Then we've got one about fair trade, and then we've got one about addiction to sugar. So storage one.
Your tummy? No, sorry.
Yeah, storing your tummy is an excellent idea. That's a good way of doing it.
Okay. So this is the way I store my chocolate. I am a proper chocolate. I love chocolat. So I actually have soap boxes. And they're wooden. You can get them on Etsy, and they are what you make soap in. Can you see that? And if you put them upright you don't want it too warm or it'll melt, and you don't want it too cold either, and you don't want it damp. So really in here it's about 18 to 20 degrees in the bakery, and I store mine all upright in there, and I have 2 of them. There you go. That's how I store my chocolate.
And I think you've got the right elements. So you basically want to keep the temperature as constant as you can, above 15, below 18. You want to keep it away from light. And then you also want to try and basically keep them sealed. So the other thing that we do when you subscribe to Cocoa Runners is that we give you a pouch like this.
Ooh.
And we'll send you some just so that you've got them. And we actually should put them in the boxes because you probably won't have eaten all the chocolate in one go. And you can reuse them. They're environmentally sensitive. They're all recycled and everything else like that. But that's the other hint that I would give you. You can use just a normal Ziploc bag. Make certain that it's not going to permeate the smell or anything like that. But don't put chocolate in the fridge. That's one thing, unless you're in a very, very hot climate. Don't put chocolate in the fridge. But basically light, heat, and water are the things you want to keep away from it. And you want to try and basically store it in an airtight container.
You also don't want it anywhere where you might get any, I don't know if you know this, but weevils, flower weevils will eat chocolate given half a chance.
Yes, no, we often we've actually had 1 or 2 cases of actually sort of stuff in the raw mail having slightly unpleasant consequences. So yeah, so it's worth knowing that a Ziploc bag will keep it, there are sometimes organic food has organic guests. Question about the fair trade label.
Yeah, go on.
Shall I take a sort of an easy stab at it from the chocolate perspective?
I can be, so tell me about the fair trade. I personally, I have seen both ends of the fair trade, and I like one end and I don't like the other.
Yeah, so I think that, look, fair trade was designed to work for certain sorts of crops like bananas, which are grown in very large estates or plantations. To be candid, it's not designed brilliantly for chocolate, because the average cocoa farmer has only 1 or 2 hectares, maybe 5 or 10. The cost of the certification can be more than their annual income. And candidly, the fair trade premium is not enough to get them. I mean, the average cocoa farmer gets paid 86 cents in Cote d'Ivoire or Ghana. They need $2.50. And 20% premium is great, better than nothing, but it's not enough. And it also doesn't smooth it out enough. So definitely, if you're seeing non-fair trade, fair trade, always go for fair trade. But actually, transparent direct trade to me is a much more important one.
So can I jump in at this point and say an example of a fair trade, Spencer? So when I went to go and see a very, very large conglomerate who was producing chocolate, and I walked in, I went to shake the hand of the company that was showing me around. It was in Birmingham. And as I put my hand out to shake his hand, he looked me up and down and he said, let me make it very clear. He said, any awkward questions in this interview, he said, the interview ends. And the reason that he make it very clear that I wasn't going to ask any awkward questions is because they were into mass balancing. And they used the fair trade because they mass balance. Now, what that actually meant was less than 0.6 pence per bar, that's per pound in money that we spend on chocolate, went back to the farmer. And the mass balancing gave an unfair marketing understanding that this company, a global mega player, was being fair. It was being anything but fair. Yeah. And if you actually roll back and look at what that meant, it was I cannot even, Spencer, the difference between a direct supporting a single producer and not is quite serious. And I'm going to say something here. There are over 200,000 slave known children in the slave industry in chocolate right now. And I'm not going to be very politically correct. People can go around knocking statues down of people who were slave trading 200 years ago, but they would be far more powerful if they actually looked at the kind of chocolate that they were buying than knocking a bloody statue into a river. It is going on right now, right as we speak. And if you want to be a revolutionist and you want to change the world and you want things to change, you are going to have to stop and think about what you as a person do, because you can eat chocolate that is a commodity chocolate covered in sugar, you have no accountability for who picked that chocolate, no understanding of what it meant. Or you can buy a chocolate that is actually putting your money, your pound that you earned, into a positive cycle that is actually going to help the farmer and help the planet, and in turn nourish you with and your gut microbiome that will improve the way you feel physically and mentally. So I actually feel extremely strongly about this, as you can tell. I'm political on every level, and this is one of them, where we have to ask ourselves, what are the day-to-day actions that we take? What is the consequence on a lifetime of purchasing chocolate, for example? What is the cumulative effect of that purchasing power? It's massive. It's huge.
I think you don't have to spend much more, and actually you're going to eat less. I mean,
and you only eat. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's chocolate everywhere here, Spencer, right now. But the reality is, I've probably only eaten about yay much chocolate, and I'm completely full and satiated from it. So
20 grams.
Pleasure. Is per pound is huge in comparison to eating and scoffing a sort of massive 500-gram bar of chocolate that's cheap, full of fat, full of sugar, that just wallops it on your backside. Sorry, I think the difference is on every level completely extraordinary. So I'm a massive fan of what you're doing and real chocolate.
What you do too. I mean, the other comment that I would
no opinion here.
So the other thing which I find extraordinary is that, the reason why we picked the Santome chocolate, the Italian chocolate at the beginning from Santome, is that the extraordinary thing is, in 1910, over 110 years ago, there was a really, really powerful consumer movement to stop slavery in chocolate. And it's extraordinary to me that 100 years later, we can't do anything about it. And so I'm going to try and sort of combine that with one last question that we've got, which is, how do we encourage people who are addicted to sugar to move to a healthier craft chocolate? So this is it's the other side of the chocolate story, which is that, you know, we always sort of compare chocolate to fine wines and to specialty coffee.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is that the thing which is addictive in coffee is caffeine. The thing which is addictive in alcohol is alcohol. But in chocolate's case, theobromine, the active ingredient, actually is not addictive. Or you'd have to have a ton of it. I mean, really like a couple of kilos a day. The sugar is the addictive bit, but the sugar is actually playing another game on you. And actually, I don't know the answer to this. I think part of it's what Vanessa's been saying about just be smarter on your food. Part of it's just learning to savor. Vanessa.
I have an answer, and the problem is it means you're going to have to hide your chocolate. So the first thing is, over here in the corner, I've two of my children here at the moment. I started feeding them dark chocolate when they were little. In fact, I fed them dark chocolate before I fed them light chocolate. The bad thing is I have to hide my chocolate or they still eat it. And my 13-year-old girl will go in the cupboard and tuck into some dark chocolate as happily as she'll tuck into some milk chocolate, which, you know, start your children off young. So if you have children, grandchildren, cousins, nieces, nephews, neighbours, don't assume that they just want cheap confection. The second thing is, roll back a little bit at a time. So start with a 43% chocolate, move to a 53% chocolate, and then move back into, so the milk chocolates that cocoa runners stock are often high cocoa, even though they're milk chocolate. And start at that point, just breaking off a little bit of chocolate and enjoying literally the tiniest little bit like that, almost like a coffee bean size. And so you have to develop your palate a little bit at a time. And I do that by, when I'm here, and often people are here for a week, they will say, but by the time they've been here for a week, they don't want sugar anymore. Because sugar in whatever form is overtakes all the other senses. If you have these senses and you have these exquisite tools where you can taste cocoa and chocolate and coffee and caramel and bananas and berries and blackberries and strawberries and charcoal and hay and tobacco and wood smoke and fresh cut grass, bringing the sugar into it and hitting yourself with a big sugar, you can kiss goodbye to all those flavors. And you're literally, it's drowning out all of the delicacy and the exquisite flavors. And if that's what you like, then, you know, fine. But actually, if you can give yourself a little bit of space and move away from sugar in every form, you will suddenly find this amazing palate, and it's worth developing, I promise. It's just one of the best things in life, is being able to taste these things.
So I think that is the most fantastic way we could end it, which is basically inviting people to learn to savor, learn to appreciate their palate with your amazing chocolates and your amazing breads.
Yeah.
Vanessa, I cannot thank you enough. It's been
lovely.
We will have to do another one of these in the new year, this time with a bit more cooking on it. But you are an absolute superstar. I encourage everybody for Christmas. You've got an amazing new book. We've got some copies on the website, which we're going to sell with some craft chocolate, which people should come for. And, you know, just cannot thank you enough for being such a superstar, for all that you do. And it's been for me a really great treat and a pleasure to get to know a little bit more about your Latin lessons, all your Gauloise smoking when you were a youth, and also, you know, the rest of the family. So fantastic. Well done, Alistair. Well done, your kids.
And my team.
Thank you so much. And well done, your amazing team.
Yeah, and the people I work with, definitely. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Vanessa, and just wishing everybody a really safe and happy Christmas. And we're all going to, you know, unfortunately, we won't be able to be with many different people, but the brilliant thing is follow Vanessa's recipes. They're fantastic. They will change everything and you will learn to savor. Fantastic. Thank you to everyone who's attended. I hope you have enjoyed every minute as I have.
Oh, husband's here. Do you want to see? Do you want to meet him?
I think we should definitely say hello to the other half.
You've been the subject of. No, he's not. He's shy.
Definitely did get a picture of him in though.
Yeah, we did.
We'll speak again soon, but thank you all very, very much. Congratulations to you and your team, your family. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Good night, everyone.
And I am now going to try and sort of wrap this up. But thank you all so much. I'm wishing everybody a very, very